Trenton Journal is for people who won't take no for an answer. Trenton Journal is for community leaders. Trenton Journal is for people who won't settle. Trenton Journal highlights some of the positive voices in the community and fills in the information gaps through original reporting.
Welcome to Capital Conversations. I'm your host, Kenneth Miles, and today I have with me Sally Lane, board chair of Crossroads of the American Revolution. Thank you for joining us, Sally.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And one of the reasons why I invited you here is so you can tell us a little bit of what your organization has planned for the 250th celebration of the country.
Sure. First of all, I have to explain the organization, I think, because it's not well known. So Crossroads of the American Revolution is a national heritage area. There are 62 in the country. And we are the only one that is focused solely on the American Revolution. The reason for that is that Washington spent 1/4 of his time throughout the 8 years of the Revolution in New Jersey. So we're the crossroads. New Jersey is the crossroads of the Revolution because Philadelphia was where the Continental's capital was, New York was where the British capital was, and the armies went back and forth. And so we've been in existence since 2002, and prior to COVID, the legislature determined that there should be a focused way to celebrate the 250th in New Jersey. And so they passed legislation that said a nonprofit national heritage area should be, and there's only one in New Jersey, so kind of focused legislation. It should be the partner of the New Jersey Historical Commission. So together we're called Revolution NJ, and we get together $500,000 a year to plan for and create programming for the 250th.
What kind of programs do you have in mind?
Well, so the programs that have been set up and are ongoing, for instance, Tavern Talks, I don't know if you've heard about, but that is, it's an initiative of the Historical Commission, and they go to tavern, usually breweries, not always, sometimes an actual tavern, around the state, and they invite people. There's one coming up in Bordentown in October. They invite people to come buy a beer and sit. When you think about it, taverns were often the biggest buildings in 18th century anywhere in the colonies. And that's where people had conversations. And by people, I mean men. There weren't women, men. And so they arrange people at tables, and then they have reenactors representing different opinions who go around during the 2 hours and sit at each table and talk in their character, either as somebody who doesn't want to pick sides, or as a loyalist, or as somebody who's disgruntled, to get the participants to understand that it wasn't a natural decision. Everybody didn't just say, "Ooh, I want to be a patriot." So we have we have a kind of legendary interpretation of the revolution. We get the feeling that everybody was a farmer who dropped their plows and ran off to enlist, and that's, hardly realistic.
And what's the response?
The response has been huge to that program, and it is, people just come away with a very different understanding. I've gone to one here in Trenton during Patriots Week, and there will be one in Patriots Week this year, with a neighbor who just was just said, wow, this has changed my whole perspective. I just hadn't thought about all these different ways people would have approached what side are we on. So I think it's been a very useful thing. There is a whole effort to do, we call them revolutionary schools. There is a whole effort to do a new curriculum that better explains, because when, at the time of the bicentennial, we didn't have all the research tools that we have today. So it was not common for people to have read the letters of Washington or of other founders. You had to read them, you had to find them in multi-volume sets that would be in a big library. Now you can just go online and find anything you want. So our understanding with all the digitization, we now are able to look at maps that, hadn't been found yet or hadn't been properly handled for years. So there's a lot more information, and the research being done and the sheer number of books coming out about different aspects just increases every day. So anyway, there's schools, there's something like the Tavern Talks. There are workshops going on a lot with historic sites to better prepare them and their workers to be in the right clothing. I mean, if you go back to the bicentennial, people often spoke of costumes and they had zippers, which hadn't been invented, So there's an effort in many ways to get things right. And the biggest effort maybe is to say it isn't just white men who were involved in the American Revolution. And we need to talk about enslaved, indentured, women, Native American, all these different groups that have for years not been discussed. And again, it's the research that makes that so much easier now. We know names of people. We can learn about their lives and then tell those stories.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to ask you, how do you think Trenton and New Jersey as a whole has reckoned with this past of racism and colonialism? And how do you put that into your programming?
I would say Trenton is particularly lucky because it has the old barracks, which is a first-rate museum. If you look around the state, first of all, a military museum, unusual. We're the only 18th century barracks left. The old barracks is in this state, and there aren't many elsewhere. So you've got a real building. You have a history that goes back to what we in this country call the French and Indian War, otherwise known as the 7 Years' War. And Washington fought in that war in Pennsylvania. That was his military experience before the Revolution. But at the barracks, you have a staff of people who have, for the most part, graduate degrees in some aspect of American history in the 18th century. And it's just a wonderful resource. So that and their research. Then at the Trent House, which is an older building, Trent, who was our second generation settler, had slaves. And we know their names because they were on the inventory of his property made when he died in 1724. So we have ways into our history that most cities and towns don't. And we have, and it's a shame that so many people walk past the old barracks. It is at the moment closed for re-roofing and serious work being done on it. But, people should just walk in and take advantage of a tour when it reopens in February.
So what I hear from you is that there are events that's constantly going on, but the question comes from a lot of people are asking, I guess they're looking for like a big media blitz for the celebration of the 250th anniversary of the country, and they haven't seen that yet. They haven't seen detailed
right,
like parties and
that is
marketing for tourism.
Yep.
Because this is our opportunity.
Yep, and that is partly because we don't have a lot of money for this effort, and the money we have, and we do marketing with travel and tourism. Travel and tourism started years ago, 3 years ago. They joined a consortium of states in our area so that they could plan together for the 250th, because we also want to be able to advertise in England and in Germany, the Hessians, to have tourists who've always heard about the American Revolution on that side think about coming here. So there are efforts that have started, and there will be a big blitz, of course, July 4th, 2026, which is, in many people's minds, that is the 250th, the signing of the Declaration of Independence. But honestly, it lasts for 8 years. So when people are saying, what are, and then there are towns saying, what are we doing July 4th? You're going to be watching probably TV, unless you're at Liberty State Park, where the big New Jersey event is going to be. I don't think every town should be worrying about July 4th. I think what people want to do is get a better understanding of the revolution and know that you've got 8 years to have that understanding come about in your locality.
Is your organization working with the city or county to coordinate?
We go to a ton of meetings, and I'm a board member, volunteer, as opposed to staff, right? I am a history person, and I live in Trenton, so I do go to meetings all the time. There was one yesterday. Yes, we do attend meetings throughout the state. We are working, and mostly ours is an advisory role to try and help people understand where the resources are, or what programs they can attach themselves to, what they I belong to a research consortium which meets by Zoom and involves museum professionals doing research in this period in the Trenton, Princeton area, because we're all looking at the same things. And the reason for them is to put them into exhibitions and into tours, but still we all have to come to the same, we have to figure things out.
With that being said, do you think Trenton as a city does a good job at promoting its place and history?
No, I've never thought that Trenton as a city, and for a while I was responsible for that, because back in the late 80s and throughout the 90s, I was involved in creating an organization which was called Trenton Convention Visitors Bureau, to have a visitor center to answer questions for people, but also to focus efforts. It's hard. I mean, when somebody now says, let's have a meeting of everybody involved in celebrating the 250th in this area, they're inviting 70 people. That's a hard meeting to, and so you have to keep, unfortunately, where we've fallen down in this town is we don't have a central place for anyone to come to. We don't have a central person to organize things. So when somebody says we need to gather Trenton people to talk about this or that, they're gathering almost too many people, because they come at it from so many different angles. And it's a New Jersey problem. Everyone wants to do their own thing. Alas. Cooperation, collaboration is what really helps. So the counties around the state that are moving ahead, have invested money in a central place and then are trying to help groups.
So what's your budget? What are you working with?
Our budget at, Rev and J's budget is $500,000 a year. I mean, that's all.
A year to do events.
Yeah, to do whatever we're doing. Okay. So in some cases, that has been hiring consultants to do marketing or hiring a consultant to do fundraising. It's also been hiring consultants to plan out what are the sites in the state that are the primary ones and what do they need, which is what we did in the outset to say, we did Crossroads had to do a survey, turned out to be of 150 buildings or places in New Jersey tied to the revolution, at least in time. And from that, we then said, here are the tiers of here are those who actually interpret the revolution. Here are those who are the right period but don't do it because they're interpreting something else. And here are those that really don't have the ability, meaning don't have staff or something of that kind.
Has your organization been impacted in any way with the change in federal policy in terms of DEI initiatives?
Yes, because all national heritage areas get $500,000 a year, or have in the recent past been budgeted for $500,000 a year from the federal government, and that's in jeopardy now. So we, as of today's date, we understand that we're still in the federal budget. The federal budget can be changed, or this federal government can decide not to allocate the money, not to let it be spent. So we do not have a sure path anymore to being in existence for longer than the end of this calendar year, which is when we would have to spend the money we already have. Federal money.
Federal money.
Yeah.
But do you guys receive donations?
We do, and we certainly look for grants from the $500,000 that the state allocates to Rev and J. We get $300,000, and the Historical Commission gets $200,000. The governor's office has allocated some of the COVID, different funding. So marketing, we've gotten money. But it's a question. It's an enterprise without a great deal of assurance.
Do you have any figures in terms of how many people you expect to visit Trenton during the anniversary?
They wouldn't
2026?
They wouldn't be at that level. The figures are primarily at the state level. The state has for many years done. They pay consultants to count how many visitors there are, and they ask questions of them. So heritage tourism visitors, which are the ones you would anticipate in Trenton, that is somebody who, while visiting New Jersey, goes to at least one museum or historic site. That's the definition used in the industry. But how you count people coming to Trenton is a question because there is no hotel. Ordinarily, they count people who stay over. So that skews things. I can tell you from years past, and again, we're skewed by the barracks not being open for months or this or that, the State House, having construction. But there are figures, each of the institutions keeps figures on how many people. And before COVID, for instance, the State House had 60,000 people a year go through their tours. You can guess that far more people went to the State House for different reasons, but those are the ones who took tours. And then, it drops down, the State Museum.
But to your point, there's no one person or entity that is responsible for extracting these numbers and figuring out in total how many people are coming into the city of Trenton.
There is no person or organization that does, that is focused solely on dealing with visitation to Trenton.
We need it. But
I said this 40 years ago,
but what we didn't get into during this interview, and I think this needs to be said. You mentioned an organization, but you actually started the Visitors Bureau in Trenton, which is no longer.
Yep.
Why is that?
It was taken over by the Chamber of Commerce, which intended to expand it. And I think, not for me to say, but I was focused on it having a visitor center that was open 7 days a week, that answered any question. I saw it as you can look like a genius for a while because there was nothing. So you're filling a void, and you want to answer every question. You want to try and the focus changed, I think, and it fell apart. So it only lasted another year and a half after I left.
In total, how long did it last?
2006, I think. So I left in 2004 to go to DEP to project manage the urban park in Trenton.
Now, if people wanted to find more information about your organization or perhaps volunteer, how can they do so?
Well, first of all, I think everybody should look at revolutionnj.org, which is because it'll give you a much wider picture of all the things going on, including calendars of events. Any group, any nonprofit can become a proud partner. It doesn't cost anything. Municipalities and counties can join. I went to both Trenton City Council and the commissioners of the county and got both of them to join. Sometimes it takes pushing, So I just
think you
show
could do
up.
that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. But a lot of counties and municipalities, Hopewell Township, I believe, Mercer County, Trenton, Hopewell Township, Princeton, I think Princeton Township, a lot of them have joined the efforts and are more and more involved in just thinking. But I think everybody should start getting a little more interested. And coming up in November, starting November 16th, Ken Burns will have this 12-hour American Revolution series on public television. And that's going to run 6 nights in a row, 2 hours a night. And having just come from his preview of it for our organization in Newark this week, it looks spectacular.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having
Appreciate it.
me.